Revealed, the incredible divine purpose behind your pain. Discover transforming biblical truths. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, dwells in the land of Canaan. His father, Jacob, who loved him more than his other sons, has gifted him with a coat of many colors, signifying the affection that sets him apart. Yet, beneath the radiant hues of that robe lies darkness, the envy of his brothers. As they shepherd their flocks under the sweltering sun on the Hebron hills, the air turns thick with malice. Their laughter fades, replaced by venomous whispers of betrayal. Driven by hatred, they strip Joseph of his cherished coat and toss him into a pit, leaving him for dead. "Why, O Yahweh?" Joseph cries into the abyss, his voice swallowed by the earth. What is the purpose of this treachery? In his heart, he wrestles with confusion, yet faith flickers, a small light kindled by memories of his father's words and the dreams that heralded greatness. He had dreamed of harvests and stars, visions of power and respect, but now he languishes in darkness. As the day wanes and shadows deepen, Midianite traders appear, dragging their wares behind them, their laughter jarring against Joseph's despair. With no recourse, his brothers pull him from the pit, and his pleas go unheard as he is sold into slavery. Bound for Egypt, a land steeped in mysteries and idolatry, Joseph clings desperately to memories of home, yet the weight of betrayal claws at his heart. He whispers silent prayers to Yahweh, holding tightly to his dreams. In Egypt, Joseph becomes a servant in Potiphar's house, an official of Pharaoh. Here, the Lord blesses him. Everything he touches seems to flourish. Despite his circumstances, Joseph urges himself to remain faithful, honoring the God who has not abandoned him. But soon, shadows threaten again. Potiphar's wife, with desperation and lust, attempts to lure him into sin, but Joseph, steadfast and resolute, refuses her advances, crying out for the purity of character and devotion to Yahweh. Yet her wrath unfurls as lies are cast, and Joseph is thrown into prison, a deep cell where darkness reigns. Each breath he takes fills him with despair, but memories of his father's teachings provide solace. Yahweh is with me, he murmurs, clinging to the belief that each trial bears divine purpose. In the confines of the cell, faith unfurls anew, as Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker are cast into imprisonment alongside him. Joseph interprets their dreams through divine revelation. He offers hope in the depths of despair, foretelling the cupbearer's restoration. The cupbearer, grateful yet forgetful, returns to his position, leaving Joseph to languish alone. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories.
Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey. I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now, let's continue with what the Lord did next. Days break into months, and Joseph's spirit touches the depths of despair. Yet a flicker of hope remains, a belief that God has not forgotten him. As Pharaoh wrestles with troubling dreams that cause unrest in the land of Egypt, a spark ignites within the cupbearer's memory. He recalls Joseph and his gift for dream interpretation, thus leading to Joseph's summons before the mighty Pharaoh. As Joseph stands before the throne, fear and anticipation converge within him. Will this be the moment of revelation? The answers to his past filled with pain seem poised to intertwine with the tapestry of God's unfurling plan for redemption. What destiny awaits for him and his family, and how will God's purpose become clear through the storms? As Joseph stands before Pharaoh, the room brims with unspoken tension. Pharaoh's brow is furrowed, and his heart is troubled by dreams of 7 gaunt cows devouring 7 sleek fat ones, and of 7 ears of thin grain swallowing 7 plump ears. The air is thick with the weight of impending revelation. "Joseph," Pharaoh calls, his voice echoing like thunder in the silence, "I am told that you can interpret dreams." The mighty monarch's piercing gaze falls upon him, stirring the remnants of fear and hope in Joseph's heart. "Not I," Joseph replies humbly, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." In this moment, Joseph's faith is unyielding. He knows that the God who was with him in the pit and in prison stands with him now in the presence of Pharaoh. Pharaoh recounts his dreams, detailing the misery that haunts his nights. As he speaks, the Spirit of the Lord fills Joseph, granting him insight into the mysteries veiled in shadows. The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do, Joseph declares. The 7 good cows and the 7 good ears signify 7 years of great abundance for Egypt. Following them, however, will come 7 years of famine, during which the land will be consumed. The king listens, captivated and alarmed. Joseph presses on, urgency tinging his voice. Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Appoint commissioners to take 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of abundance. Gather all the grain under your authority and store it for the coming famine, that the land may not perish. Pharaoh's eyes widen, filled with awe and recognition of the divine guidance that flows through Joseph.
"Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" he proclaims to his officials. With that, Pharaoh turns towards Joseph, exalting him. "Since God has made all this known to you, no one is as discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." In an instant, Joseph, the once rejected dreamer, rises to greatness, the vessel through which God's sovereign plan unfolds into a city once troubled by uncertainty. The golden chain of authority is placed around Joseph's neck. Garments of fine linen envelop him, signifying his new identity as governor of Egypt. Joseph's heart, while filled with the joy of divine providence, carries the weight of both his past and his family left behind. As Pharaoh commands a chariot to be prepared for Joseph, the young man stands adorned in glory, yet cast in shadows of his former life. In a moment of silence, Joseph whispers a prayer of gratitude. "O Lord, I see now the purpose of my suffering. You have raised me up to save many lives." The dreams of his youth, of sheaves and stars, swirl in his mind, grim colors of betrayal now painted anew with strokes of providence. As the years of abundance yield an overflowing harvest, Joseph's wisdom transforms the land. Yet the lurking famine brews on the horizon, whispering of future trials that may test his newfound calling. In Canaan, Jacob hears the news of grain in Egypt and sends his sons to seek sustenance, unaware that the brother they betrayed now holds their fate in his hands. What reunion awaits them? How deep runs the river of forgiveness and reconciliation? Joseph watches them approach from a distance, recognition flooding his heart, a storm of emotions roiling within him. Will he reveal himself to his brothers? What lengths will the Lord go to in order to fulfill the promise made to Abraham? The tapestry of God's sovereign plan continues to weave, leaving Joseph at a crossroads, with the fate of his family intertwined in the miracle yet to unfold. As the sun rose over the land of Egypt, casting its golden light upon the fields, the air was ripe with anticipation. Joseph stood upon the balcony of his palace, the vastness of the kingdom stretched before him, a kingdom of both plenty and coming want. The laughter of children and the hum of industry filled the streets below, yet his heart was burdened, for he knew the shadows that loomed upon the horizon. In the days that followed Pharaoh's exaltation of Joseph, the years of plenty advanced swiftly, just as the Lord had foretold. Each harvest exceeded the last, and Joseph's wisdom in gathering grain bore fruit as the silos brimmed to overflowing. Yet with each bountiful season, Joseph's thoughts wandered back to his family, to the brothers who had cast him into darkness, robbing him of kinship and comfort. How often had he longed to see their faces, to understand their hearts, to embrace them in forgiveness. One fateful day, as the hunger gripped Canaan with fierce intensity, Jacob summoned his sons. "Why do you sit here looking at one another?" he lamented. "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy for us that we may live and not die." Little did Jacob know, the very brother they had forsaken now held the keys to their survival. As the 10 brothers journeyed, Joseph stood ready. He was adorned in the attire of authority, yet deep within him stirred a tempest of emotions, anger, joy, and most significantly, compassion. When they entered his presence, the sight of their familiar, worn faces ignited a myriad of memories, bitter and sweet. Joseph spoke harshly to them,
concealing his identity beneath the guise of a powerful Egyptian. "You are spies," he accused sharply. "You have come to see the nakedness of the land." The brothers, taken aback, fell to their knees. "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons. We are honest men." In their plea, Joseph perceived not only their desperation, but the seeds of remorse buried deep within them. "You are not honest men," he countered, his voice projecting authority, while his heart longed to reveal the truth. "You are here to test me." As Joseph wrestled within, he sought to uncover whether their hearts had changed. He demanded that one among them be imprisoned, while the others returned home to fetch their youngest brother, Benjamin. The thought of his mother's favored son ignited a fierce protective instinct within him, a remnant of his own childhood. Once alone, Joseph was overwhelmed, for he heard the anguished voices of his brothers reminiscing about their betrayal, their guilt spilling forth like a torrent. "Surely we are being punished for our brother," they lamented. Overcome with emotion, Joseph turned away, weeping for the bond severed by pride and envy. It was then at that moment Joseph's heart resolutely shifted, longing for redemption. Could he truly forgive them? Could he carry forth the plans of God, which stretched across lifetimes, thick with significance and grace? As days turned into weeks, the brothers returned with Benjamin, and the stage was set for revelation. In a banquet filled with silence and heartbeats, as they gathered in Joseph's house, the anticipation crackled like firewood about to ignite. Joseph, filled with divine purpose, prepared to unveil not only his identity, but also the sovereign hand of God that had orchestrated every moment. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt," he would soon declare. How would his brothers respond? Were they prepared to meet the very mercy they had cast aside? In the echo of this reunion, the tapestry of God's greater design began to unfurl.
For through their actions, God had fashioned a means of grace that would echo through generations, a promise of restoration, not just for one family, but for nations. What further wonders would this sovereign plan reveal, stirring hearts for a future yet unseen? As the sun dipped low in the Egyptian sky, casting shadows that whispered of the day's end, Joseph stood before his brothers, his heart racing with all that had built toward this pivotal moment. The tapestry of emotions within him unfurled, years of anguish, regret, and hope, woven into the very fabric of his being. "Come near to me," Joseph said, his voice steady, yet filled with gravity. As they drew closer, the weight of his identity pressed upon him. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." His words struck like thunder, reverberating through the stillness of the room. The brothers stood petrified, hearts racing, minds grappling with disbelief. They exchanged glances rife with turmoil and fear, the truth dawning upon them like the looming sun of a new day. "Is it possible?" one dared murmur, trembling at the sight of the brother they had once forsaken. Joseph, seeing their dread, softened his countenance. "Do not be afraid," he spoke gently. "For what you intended for evil, God intended for good, to bring about the saving of many lives." His eyes glistened with tears of understanding, for he recognized the divine orchestration at play, a mystery unfolding under the sovereign hand of God. As disbelief turned to bewilderment, the brothers fell upon their faces, shame and awe intertwining in their hearts. "We have betrayed you," they cried. "What shall we do?" In their pleas, guilt poured forth, the weight of their past accusing them. Yet Joseph saw not merely their transgression, but a longing for redemption, a chance for reconciliation. "Fear not," he reassured them. "Come, I will provide for you and your little ones, for in the midst of famine, I hold the key to your preservation. God has granted me favor, and through his wisdom, I will nourish you." With that promise, Joseph beckoned them to rise from the ground and to embrace once more the brotherhood shattered by the hands of envy. In that sacred moment, the room was thick with unspoken burdens lifted, yet Joseph remembered the prophetic dreams that had once ignited sibling strife. The grains of wheat bowing before him in dreams were now replete with meaning, echoing the promise of greater purpose behind trials faced. Indeed, God had been with him throughout, molding him through their collective journey, shaping destinies that spanned beyond mere family ties.
His brothers gathered their breath, still trembling, their hearts heavy with gratitude and grief intertwining. "How can we repay you?" they stammered, regret coloring their voices. Yet Joseph simply smiled. There was no price for grace, only the call to return to the paths of righteousness.
In the ensuing days, Joseph gathered his family, sending the brothers back to Canaan with provisions fit for their every need, and promise weighed even heavier. "Hurry, bring my father down to me, for I will care for you in this land of prosperity, and together we shall thrive." As caravans laden with grain set forth, the air buzzed with news yet to unfold, destiny being sealed through collective unity. Joseph's heart soared, not merely for his own fortune, but for a greater family legacy unfolding before his eyes. And thus, in the hearts of those gathered, and in the dusty roads winding towards Canaan, the seeds of restoration began to take root. God's sovereign plan, intricately interwoven through flesh and blood, was emerging from shadows into vivid reality. The family torn apart by sin was set to be intertwined by divine redemption. Awaiting their arrival, back in Canaan, Jacob's heart still bore the scars of loss. What awaited him within the arms of his son was not only reconciliation, but a pivotal turn in their covenant, a promise extending beyond their immediate need into promises of nation-building and blessings upon generations. As all creation held its breath, hoping for divine favor, the stage was primed for God's greater purpose to be revealed. For the unfolding story of Joseph was merely a prelude to the grand restoration awaiting the entire world, shaping destinies with the weight of providence and grace. What magnificent work would God soon perform in order to bind hearts and nations together through mercy and transformative love? And it came to pass that as the weary brothers traveled back to Canaan, laden with grain and their hearts full of hope, the mountains echoed their footsteps. They spoke among themselves, their voices a mixture of disbelief and awe. "How could our brother, whom we forsook, show such kindness? He is now a ruler in Egypt, yet he remembers us not with wrath but with love." As they neared their father's tent, an unseasonable wind swept across the land, stirring the leaves and the hearts of those anticipating yet another heart-wrenching reunion. Jacob, deeply aged by sorrow, sat alone under the shade of the olive tree, pondering the lonesome years since he lost Joseph. The memory of his son was a tender wound, yet his spirit clung to the hopeful promises of God. When they arrived, there was a pause, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. The brothers exchanged glances, unsure of how to approach their father with the extraordinary news. "Shall we tell him of Joseph?" one of them said quietly, apprehension mingling with excitement. With trembling hands, they unveiled the story, recounting the favor that had been bestowed upon Joseph. "Our brother lives. Great is his power in Egypt. He has sent us back with grain and bids us bring you to him." At the mention of Joseph, Jacob's heart almost faltered. His mind raced, the agony of loss and the flicker of hope collapsing into each other like waves upon the shore. "Is it true?" he exclaimed, grasping at the words that danced before him. "My son lives, after all these years?" In that moment, faith and doubt collided within him. But the brothers reassured him, revealing the tokens of Joseph's bounty, the riches of the land that spoke of prosperity. Keenly aware of the divine hand that had orchestrated this reunion, Jacob's heart began to stir with a mix of joy and trepidation. "Let us go," Jacob proclaimed boldly, determination igniting within him. "I must see my son before I die." With renewed purpose, he gathered his household, preparing for the journey that would lead them into the embrace of restoration. As they traveled toward Egypt under the vigilant eyes of the Almighty, the anxious hearts of both Jacob and Joseph beat in tandem, unaware of the greater narrative interlacing their destinies. In Egypt, Joseph's heart raced with anticipation, for he sensed the footsteps of prophecy approaching. He prepared for their arrival, instructing his servants to make ready a feast. Visions of reunion, longed for in the depths of his soul, played out in his mind. On the day of their meeting, the moment culminated. Joseph stood before his brothers, and when Jacob entered, aged and full of years, Joseph could contain himself no longer. He ran to his father, collapsing into his arms, their tears mingling into a holy testimony of love restored. "Now I can die in peace," Jacob whispered, holding tight to the son he thought lost.
and understanding dawned upon him that their reunion was not merely an end, but a beginning, a divine thread that would shape the tapestry of generations to come. And in that embrace, God's promise ignited, shimmering with hope. Egypt will not only provide for us, Jacob proclaimed, but it shall serve as a cradle for a great nation. Thus a new chapter unfurled as the family settled in Egypt. God's sovereign hand cradled their lives, setting in motion a plan that would bind them in trials yet unseen, but laced with glory. For unbeknownst to them, a greater destiny awaited, a promise that would echo through centuries, the coming of a Redeemer who would one day deliver his people from bondage. The foundation was being laid for all creation to behold the mighty work of salvation. As the family basked in this newfound unity, a mystery lingered in the air, for the hand of God was not idle. What further wonders would soon unfold? What trials would lead to triumph? And what stories of grace would be written on the hearts of those who dared to believe? The legacy of Joseph was but a glimpse into the vastness of God's redemptive plan, waiting to be revealed as history flowed through divine providence. And it came to pass that as Jacob and his sons settled in the land of Goshen, their hearts swelled with gratitude, for they could not fathom the magnitude of God's mercies.
The sun rose gloriously over the fields, painting the earth in hues of gold, as if to declare the joy of their newfound unity. Joseph, now a prince of Egypt, continued to oversee the grain stores, vigilant in his duties, yet ever mindful of his family, who were now under his protection. He frequently visited them, bringing gifts and blessings aplenty. The brothers marveled at the fruits of Egypt, and their families flourished, their tents swelling with life and laughter. But in the quiet hours of the night, Joseph pondered the dreams of his youth, dreams that foretold of his authority, that once pricked his brothers' hearts, now woven into the very fabric of their survival. He recalled the words spoken in those dreams, and he sought the Lord in prayer, yearning for understanding of the unfolding mystery. "Why, O God, have you placed me here, a servant turned ruler?" he whispered to the winds, hoping for a sign. Meanwhile, Jacob, who had become a patriarch of renown, felt the weight of years upon him. He gathered his sons and spoke with solemnity. "My sons, the Lord has favored us. Yet let us remember the perils of envy and pride, for it was our own hands that dealt our brother a grievous blow. We must remain humble, for in our hands is the seed of a great nation." His ancient eyes gleamed with wisdom, a legacy of faith etched into his very soul. Days turned into months, and a famine swept across the land. The winds carried whispers of despair, for even in Canaan, where the promise of land was first spoken, the crops withered and the earth groaned. In the midst of this, Joseph's wisdom shone brighter as he gathered grain, ensuring not only the survival of Egypt, but that of his own family as well. "Go to Joseph," the elders of Canaan advised those overwhelmed by fear. "He holds the grain, he holds our hope." And so the brothers returned to Egypt, once again to confront the brother they had wronged. Upon their arrival, they were filled with dread. What would Joseph do? Would he cast them out, or would he extend grace yet again? Joseph, witnessing their approach from afar, remembered the turmoil of their hearts, the fear and guilt that had plagued them. With his heart softened by the love of God, he devised a plan, seeking to draw them closer, to heal old wounds. At their meeting, Joseph spoke in the tongue of a ruler, but with the heart of a brother. "You have come to see me in your need," he said, tracing the lines of their faces, the echoes of past sins flickering in his mind. "Do not fear, for it was not you who sent me here, but God, to preserve life and create a remnant." Tears brimmed in the eyes of his brothers as they realized the depth of Joseph's forgiveness. An unmistakable relief washed over them. "What shall we do?" they asked, trembling in the weight of his grace. "Go, tell my father of my glory, and bring him to me."
"We shall dwell together in Egypt where God leads us," Joseph commanded, his heart rejoicing at the thought of family restored. And so the brothers returned to Canaan, their hearts aflame with the news of restoration. Yet unbeknownst to them, deep within, God shaped this new covenant. A new destiny was being forged amidst their trials. for future generations would rise, and from Jacob's lineage a great nation would be birthed, a people who would one day be called the Israelites. As the journey commenced, the weight of what was to come hung thick in the air. What unforeseen challenges awaited them in this land of plenty, and how would their story intertwine with the divine plan laid out before them? For in God's sovereignty, the tapestry of humanity was but a whisper in the winds of providence, awaiting revelation. Therein lay the mystery of his purpose, and the hearts of many would be transformed through trials yet unseen, fulfilling the everlasting promise that God would indeed be with his people, guiding them through every storm. And Jacob, filled with hope and trepidation, gathered his belongings and the souls of his household as they prepared for the journey to Egypt. He called upon the name of the Lord, lifting his heart in prayer. O God of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, you have led me thus far. Grant me safe passage and keep my family in your care. The sun rose as they set forth, casting a warm glow upon them, illuminating the path as they traveled from the land of Canaan, bearing the weight of their past, yet buoyed by the promise of reunion. As they crossed the threshold into Egypt's borders, Joseph, informed of their arrival, readied himself with anticipation, a tumult of emotions within him. Indeed, the storms of life often lead us to harbor life's greatest treasures, he pondered. In the palace, he commanded, "Prepare the chariot, go and bring my father Jacob to me." When they met, Joseph could hardly contain himself. He fell upon his father's neck, weeping tears of joy. Jacob's heart, once burdened with the grief of loss, was now overflowing with gladness. "I had thought I would never see you again, my son," he exclaimed. Joseph responded, "Do not fear, my father, for God has placed me in this position for your salvation and for many more, that we might thrive together in this land." The family was welcomed into the heart of Pharaoh's kingdom, where they were given the choicest part of the land, a place called Goshen, a fertile valley to dwell. There, Jacob felt an overwhelming sense of God's kindness. He looked upon his sons, their families, and he marveled at how God had turned his sorrow into joy. "I have seen the face of God," Jacob declared. Yet as the years rolled on, the memory of Canaan began to fade like the evening mist. The descendants of Jacob multiplied greatly, and the land of Goshen flourished. However, over time, the Egyptians grew wary of the Israelites, fearing their numbers and strength.
Meanwhile, God had not forgotten his covenant with Abraham, his promise whispered through the ages, awaiting its fulfillment. As the Israelites increased, a shadow of a new uncertainty loomed on the horizon. Joseph, now an elder statesman, felt a stirring in his spirit, a cautioning that change was near. One fateful day, Pharaoh summoned Joseph. "The people of your kin grow too numerous, and the land become full of them. What shall we do?" he implored, anxious. "Let us not forget the good they have done for us, yet it is wise to prepare for the days ahead. We shall employ them to serve in tasks that build upon our strength rather than fear," Joseph counseled, aware that the heart of man can turn quickly. Thus began the hard labor imposed upon Jacob's sons, which would forge in them strength but sow seeds of bitterness. A division would arise that would lead to oppression and despair, the birth pangs of a great deliverance yet unknown to them. As the Israelites toiled, the Lord's eye remained upon them, his purpose unchanging. "In their suffering," he whispered through the ages, "will come the cry for salvation. I shall raise up a deliverer who will lead them through the wilderness into the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey." Thus it was that Jacob's family settled into their new life, unaware that the threads woven through their lives would one day manifest a story of redemption unlike any other. But why, they wondered, must they endure such trials when they had been called to comfort? Could the chains of their labor be transformed into a tapestry of divine purpose? For the sovereign plan of God was now unfolding, a redemption being forged in the fires of adversity, awaiting his chosen servant who would rise to fulfill the prophecy, leading his people from the shadow of bondage to the light of liberation. And it came to pass that as the years flowed like the tides of the Nile, a new Pharaoh arose, one who knew not Joseph, and he looked upon the Israelites with eyes of fear and suspicion. He saw their numbers, and in his heart dread took root, for he thought, "Should war arise, they may join with our enemies and turn against us." Thus he devised a plan to subdue them, commanding taskmasters over them, who enforced their burdens with rigor. The Israelites were made to labor in the fields, and to build cities as storehouses for Pharaoh, and their groans echoed in the night, reaching the ears of the Most High. "Yea, the Lord beheld their affliction, and I shall remember my covenant."
The cries of his people drew him near, and he stirred the hearts of the faithful among Jacob's descendants. They began to pray and lament, lifting their voices in sorrow, calling out for deliverance. Meanwhile, the midwives of Egypt were commanded by Pharaoh, "When you assist the Hebrew women in childbirth, if it is a son, you shall kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live."
Yet these midwives feared God, and they would not obey the king's command. They allowed the boys to live, and when questioned, they spoke words of cunning, saying, "The Hebrew women are vigorous and give birth before we arrive." And because of their faithfulness, the Lord blessed them and gave them families of their own. Thus the Israelites continued to multiply, and the land was filled with them. As time unfolded its story, the oppression deepened, and the hearts of the Egyptians grew harsh. The Israelites, weary and burden-laden, began to lose hope, wrapped in despair over their future. Yet within their midst, unknown to them, a child was born, a boy named Moses, destined to be the agent of God's deliverance, raised up from amongst their own. His mother, seeing that he was a beautiful child, hid him for 3 months. But when she could no longer conceal him, she made an ark of bulrushes and coated it with pitch. She placed him in the river and set his sister Miriam to watch from a distance, knowing that her child's fate rested in God's hands. The heart of God watched over that little vessel floating upon the waters. It was Pharaoh's daughter, bathing in the river, who discovered the child. Her heart was moved with compassion when she opened the ark and beheld the crying infant. "This is one of the Hebrews' children," she said. Yet Miriam approached, speaking with wisdom. "Shall I go and fetch a nurse from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and thus the child was returned to his mother, who would nourish him in secret until the time was right for him to fulfill his divine calling. Moses grew, learned the ways of the Egyptians, and within him burned a desire for justice. One day, seeing an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, he struck down the oppressor and buried him in the sand. Fear gripped his heart as he fled into the wilderness, seeking refuge far from the land of his birth. It was there, amidst the desolate beauty of the mountains, that God spoke to him through the burning bush, saying, "Moses, Moses." The ground upon which he stood was holy, and the voice of God declared his purpose. "I have seen the oppression of my people, and I have come down to deliver them." Thus began the unfolding of God's sovereign plan, woven through the tapestry of pain and humility, leading to a confrontation with the mighty Pharaoh, whose heart would be hardened against the will of God. As Moses stood before the throne, guided by divine hand, heaven and earth would witness the great signs and wonders that would lead God's people out of bondage, into freedom, their hope restored. Yet even then, the question lingered in the shadows of those who had suffered. What shall become of us in these trials? For the journey had just begun, and the path toward the promise would require great faith and courage. In the depths of despair, new life was emerging, seeds of deliverance being planted in the soil of suffering. "For the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together." Thus the hearts of the Israelites trembled with both fear and hope, for the Most High was working through their pain, unveiling a destiny promised long ago, waiting patiently to be fulfilled in its appointed time. What glorious things awaited in the dawn of deliverance yet to come! And it came to pass that, having heard the Lord's command, Moses turned his heart toward Egypt, burdened with the fate of his people. Though fear clutched at his spirit, a flicker of hope ignited within him, for the voice of God rang in his ears. "I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Moses faltered, saying, "But who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and what shall I say unto them?" The Lord replied, "Certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign unto you that I have sent you. When you have brought forth the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God upon this mountain." With trembling hands and a heart pounding like a drum, Moses took up the mantle of his calling, yet doubt stirred within. What if they do not believe me? What if they ask, "What is his name?" God answered, "I am that I am. Thus shall you say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you."
The Lord spoke further, giving Moses signs, turning his rod into a serpent and back again, and causing his hand to become leprous, only to be made whole. With these signs shall you prove that I have sent you, for I will stretch forth my hand and smite Egypt with my wonders. And yet Moses continued to plead, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. The Lord in his mercy said, Who has made man's mouth, or who makes the dumb or deaf, or the seeing or the blind? Have not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. But still Moses hesitated. Send someone else, I pray. The anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he declared, Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. You shall speak to him, and put words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth. Thus with Aaron at his side, Moses returned to Egypt. They gathered the elders of Israel, and spoke all the words that the Lord had commanded. As the signs were performed before the people, faith ignited within their hearts. The Lord has visited his people and has seen our affliction, they declared, and they bowed their heads and worshipped. Yet when Moses and Aaron approached Pharaoh, saying, Thus says the Lord God of Israel, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness, Pharaoh looked upon them with disdain. Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go.
In his pride, Pharaoh increased the burdens on the Israelites, commanding the taskmasters to deny them straw for bricks. The work became heavier, and despair overtook the Israelites. They cried out to Moses, burdened with bitterness, You have made us a stench in Pharaoh's sight. Yet God spoke to Moses again, saying, Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand will he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. The Lord reassured Moses that he had remembered his covenant with their ancestors, and his plan was unfolding, though the path ahead looked treacherous. Thus the stage was set for a profound confrontation between heaven and earth, a battle for the souls of God's chosen people. The heart of Pharaoh would prove to be as stone, yet the glory of the Lord would be revealed in ways that none could foresee. For as the days progressed, the clash of wills would bring forth signs and wonders, revealing the mighty hand of God. But a lingering question remained in the hearts of the Israelites. How long must we endure this suffering? What awaited them was a deliverance that would not just lead them from Egypt, but transform them into a nation that would bear witness to his glory. The promise of God was unfolding, a tapestry woven through trials and tribulations, leading to redemption full and true. For in pain, new life was being crafted. God's sovereign plan was at hand. And it came to pass that the days of confrontation stretched into a tapestry of trials, where the struggle between God's plan and Pharaoh's obstinate heart unfolded. The Lord unleashed devastating plagues upon the land of Egypt, each sign revealing his power to both the mighty and the meek. The waters turned to blood, frogs swarmed the land, gnats afflicted the people, flies invaded, livestock perished, boils plagued man and beast alike, and hail rained stern and fierce from the heavens. With each calamity, Pharaoh's heart hardened further, his pride shielding him from the very hand that sought mercy. Who is the Lord, he scoffed, denying the cries of the Israelites and resisting the divine signs? Yet the weight of God's sovereignty pressed upon him. With each torment, the cries of his people raised heavenward, piercing the very veil of darkness he wore. Moses stood firm, embodying the resolve of a prophet called forth from the shadows, declaring the message of the Most High. Let my people go, he cried, for the Lord demands their release. With every confrontation, the evidence of God's unfailing covenant promise unfurled, cascading through the hearts of the Israelites as hope ignited amidst despair. And as the last dread-filled plague loomed on the horizon, the Lord prepared his people for the great night of reckoning, the night when the angel of death would sweep through the land.
This will be a sign for you, the Lord instructed through Moses. Take a lamb without blemish, and mark your doorposts with its blood. For when I see the blood, I shall pass over you. That night the Israelites donned their cloaks, ready for departure, having feasted on the lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They held tightly to the promise of deliverance, knowing that their cries had not gone unheard. The weight of God's love overshadowed their fearful hearts. As midnight cloaked the land, a wailing arose that echoed throughout Egypt as the firstborns fell. Pharaoh, struck by grief, summoned Moses and Aaron in haste. "Go, take your people and flee," he commanded, fear woven into his voice. "Bless me as you leave." In that moment, the chains of bondage were shattered, for the Israelites marched forth empowered by the promise that bound them, a holy exodus, a journey of liberation. They plundered the Egyptians, blessed with silver and gold, a testament to the riches of grace given freely by the hand of God. Through the parted waters, they crossed into freedom, a miracle that would resound through generations. As the last of Pharaoh's army plunged into the depths of the sea, a song of praise erupted among the people. "I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and rider thrown into the sea." In the wilderness, where bitter waters once did flow, the Lord sweetened the springs, providing manna from heaven and quail that filled their hunger. With every provision, he nurtured faith within their hearts. He spoke to them through a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, guiding them toward the promise yet unfulfilled. Yet, even as they wandered, trials emerged. Doubt clouded their path, their hearts often yearning for the comforts of Egypt. But each test became a time of reconciling, a preparation of a people destined for a land flowing with milk and honey. In time, at Mount Sinai, God descended in thunder and fire, revealing his statutes and commandments that shaped their identity. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me." His voice, both a reminder and a call to holiness, echoed through the camp, forging a covenant of love and obedience. Thus, as the people embraced their calling, the legacy of Joseph echoed through the ages, a shadowing of a greater deliverer yet to come. For within their journey of trials and tribulations lay the preparatory hand of God, weaving a tapestry of hope through their pain. And it shall be known that amid their struggles, God's sovereign plan unfurled, a divine narrative of redemption that would lead ultimately to the coming of Christ, the Lamb of God, who would deliver not just from physical bondage, but from the deeper chains of sin and death.
Now may we, like Joseph, Moses, and the Israelites, find strength in tribulation, recognizing that in every hardship, God is at work, weaving together a legacy of faithfulness that extends beyond our understanding, drawing us into a relationship where we may proclaim his goodness forever. As you reflect upon this incredible journey, let it echo in your hearts, stirring an urgency to share his truth. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and not miss the next powerful biblical stories. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Leave a like now, letting the algorithm proclaim his faithfulness. Comment your spiritual reflections and share how this biblical story impacted your faith. Your insights can bless others. And do not wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear about God's truth. Together, as true believers, let us support biblical content, reaching more souls for Christ.